exercised. Well, in time, all this became too much for the 9 old men on the Supreme Court. They decided...
Second is defending violence, right? If you are somebody who says, well, I sort of understand where the guy's coming from, and you do see this sort of rhetoric. I found it kind of insulting, the idea that black and brown people can only understand the story of Hamilton if you cast black and brown people in the park.
If he had been at the disposal of his mother, she would have given it to him for Christmas. Then he ambled socially through Harvard.
He's willing to do all these terrible things to win. Why shouldn't you be willing to do all these terrible things to win? So 2 points here. Number one, I don't think you actually have to do terrible things to win. If I believed that people had kind of stuff is definitely dangerous, I'm always loath to attribute any one crazy person's atheistic viewpoint. And most atheist philosophers are honest enough to acknowledge this. Richard Dawkins acknowledges this. Sam Harris acknowledges this. Harari acknowledges this. Most people, the reality is that the wage gap it entirely disappears once you factor out the types of jobs that are being...
Probably why they elected me. So I'm wondering what...
Anyway, sex drenched the magazines and the movies and the theaters.
Who I'm going to be voting for one day. Thanks so much. Happy to take all questions. Thanks so much. Happy to take all questions.
You break out in insanity or pimples. Sexual freedom was a mania, and it strikes me only now that for the... When I first came to this country, I'd been teaching school in East Germany, and pictures of Frederick the Great were on the walls of every home. Scrapwood fires in the underpass beneath the Chicago Opera House. By 1932, unemployment had gone to 13 million.
Protect our shoreline to the shoreline bows every native soul. We need this solid.
Among other blessings, spread the new Coolidge prosperity across the land. The nation demanded heroes as grand.
Thanks for tweeting me the other day. I literally cried. And it's a true story. And secondly, do you believe that we have a wage?
How do we combat the leftist hypocrisy? For example, like Antifa using fascist tactics.
He'd make up to anybody he needed. A Labour leader in one state and a conservative Republican governor in another. He'd overlook the race bigotry of a southern state.
Just waiting for bread.
Part of that question is Spanish-speaking media is the main culprit. They are the ones that are indoctrinating Hispanic community. And many of...
It was worse than the saxophone or bobbed hair, if not sex, because it stimulated...
...position. That's because it is our job to constantly be re-examining our own positions and making sure that we can defend them. Those of you who are about to go to college, in college right now...
Recovery Administration, and gave America back to the Constitution. And Roosevelt fumed for a while, because...
Not just right now, but 10, 15 years in the future when you're actually old enough to run. That's usually the best tactic, and it's worked pretty well. I mean, even Bernie Sanders has been forced to disown Antifa. Even a bunch of people...
Credit swollen stock exchange. So Roosevelt would decide which banks deserved federal support and which ought to go under. It was the day the money... Incidentally authentic, but they were worn only by what were known as lounge lizards.
Again, not to use her as an example for everything, my wife's a perfect example of this. She took off a year between... In this room are the leaders that the country needs, not just right now, but 10, 15 years in the future when you're actually old enough to run. The people in this room are